Growing up with my younger sister Ellie, who is 2 years my junior, our relationship was always strained. As children, we were never close, and her animosity towards me seemed to intensify during our teenage years. Although our father treated us equally and would often correct her behaviour, my mother, perhaps due to a soft spot for Ellie, generally advised me to be the more mature one, overlooking the persistent sibling rivalry. The situation escalated during high school. In my senior year, Ellie, then a sophomore and quite popular, maliciously spread a damaging rumour about me, alleging that I was responsible for a series of thefts at our school. This was around the time a new was hired, who was later discovered to be the actual culprit. Despite this, Ellie's rumour painted me as a kleptomaniac, leading to intense bullying and social ostracism. Eventually, I couldn't bear the false accusations and bullying, leading me to confront her in a dramatic cafeteria showdown. In front of our peers, I revealed her deceit and even disclosed a few embarrassing secrets about her personal misadventures. This confrontation turned the tables, making her the subject of ridicule instead. Years of contention continued until it culminated at my wedding rehearsal dinner. After a previous falling out, I had ceased all contact with Ellie. However, she crossed another line by attempting to seduce my fiancé, prompting me to publicly expose her during the dinner. This decision, unfortunately, upset my mother greatly, who viewed my actions as harsh. Now, as I reflect on the incident, I'm left questioning whether I was justified in my actions, or if, as my mother suggests, I should have handled things differently. Reflecting on past events, I realised that my initial reaction was not rooted in regret. It all began when she spread a rumour about me, and in response, I simply put an end to it. The conflict escalated when we returned home, culminating in a fierce argument where harsh words were exchanged, almost leading to physical confrontation. Thankfully, our parents intervened just in time. From that day, communication ceased between us, and we lived as if the other did not exist, despite sharing the same roof. This silence continued until I left for college, and even upon my returns, our interactions were non-existent. Years passed, 10 in total, during which we both pursued our separate lives, ensuring our paths seldom crossed, even during family visits. This arrangement persisted until our father's untimely death 2 years ago forced us to reunite at his funeral. It was there that Ellie and I decided to set aside our differences for our mother's sake. The holidays, though awkward with just the three of us, were made slightly easier with the support of my fiancé John, who helped ease the tension. Despite our troubled past, when I got engaged, my mother and John encouraged me to invite Ellie to the wedding. Initially resistant, I warmed to the idea, hoping to mend fences as we both embarked on new chapters in our lives. In the end, Ellie gracefully accepted the invitation, expressing gratitude and surprise, which reassured me that perhaps the past conflicts could truly be left behind. As the wedding approached, all seemed well. Ellie interacted warmly with guests at the welcome party and even shared joyful moments with me. However, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when, in the early hours, John came to my room, separate, due to our family's superstitions, to show me a letter Ellie had sent him. This unexpected turn of events brought back a rush of emotions, just as we were on the cusp of possibly reconciling fully. As John handed me the letter, I instantly recognised Ellie's distinct handwriting, and a sinking feeling set in. John explained that a hotel manager had delivered it just as he was preparing for bed, claiming it was from the lady in room 310, which was Ellie's room. Although she hadn't signed her name, it was clear the letter was from her. The idea behind her actions seemed foolish, especially considering that John and I were on the brink of marriage. The contents of the letter were deeply unsettling. Despite years of estrangement and Ellie's recent normal behaviour, the letter revealed her lingering resentment. She had cunningly reversed our roles in her narrative. Ellie depicted herself as the victim, alleging that I had initiated conflicts and bullied her. She even twisted a high school incident, claiming I was the one spreading vicious rumours about her, which led to our fallout. Moreover, Ellie didn't stop at revising our past. She fabricated new lies, accusing me of interfering in her relationships and causing her breakup by pursuing her boyfriend. She described me as a living nightmare, claiming her presence at the wedding was only to protect John from making a grave mistake by marrying me. Astoundingly, she confessed to having feelings for John, suggesting they elope, believing fate had brought them together for this purpose. She proposed they meet secretly after the rehearsal dinner to discuss this further. John was visibly disturbed by the letter, which was ironic since he had been the one to encourage inviting Ellie to mend old wounds. He apologised profusely, feeling responsible for the situation. However, I reassured him that no one could have anticipated Ellie's deceitful scheme. Despite my initial shock, my response was not just of anger, but also of determination. I realised that no amount of time could change Ellie's manipulative nature. It was clear she was attempting to sabotage not only the wedding, but my future with John. Disheartened yet resolute, I disclosed to John my plan to confront this betrayal head-on. John supported me, equally appalled by Ellie's behaviour. Reflecting on everything, it was disheartening to see Ellie hadn't moved past our high school drama, and here I was, nearly 27, striving to leave those days behind. Yet, here we were, faced with her twisted actions once more, proof that some old patterns resurface, no matter how much time has passed. It seems Ellie's actions were a calculated attempt at revenge. After discovering her intentions, John and I devised a straightforward plan to address the situation. After spending some time discussing our approach in my room, John returned to his quarters to call Ellie. He agreed to meet her in the parking lot after the rehearsal dinner, as she had suggested in her letter, using his request for whiskey on ice as a cue for her to meet him. That evening, as the dinner was winding down, John signalled our plan into action by ordering the whiskey. True to the script, Ellie excused herself, supposedly heading to the restroom, but her actual destination was the parking lot. Instead of John meeting her, we both stood and revealed the existence of the letter and its contents to our stunned guests. We invited anyone curious to verify the truth by joining us in the parking lot. In the parking lot, we found Ellie visibly shocked, momentarily frozen like a deer in headlights. Realising she was caught, she tried to flee, but it was futile. The truth was out. The situation quickly turned chaotic, and I asked everyone except for close family to return to their rooms. With just my mother and in-laws remaining, we confronted Ellie in her room. It took several knocks before she opened the door, visibly upset. When she saw us, she attempted to lash out, but John intervened. I told her it was best she leave, and she silently began packing, her actions confirming she was ready to go. The hardest blow was to my mother, who broke down, unable to comprehend Ellie's motives, especially since it seemed Ellie's actions were more about causing drama than any genuine feelings for John. After Ellie left, the room felt heavy with disappointment and disapproval. Before John and I could retreat to our room, my mother stopped us. She expressed her understanding of our upset, but criticised the public nature of our response. She argued that I should have handled the situation more maturely, confronting Ellie privately rather than creating a public spectacle. My reaction to her criticism was heated. I felt betrayed by her seeming sympathy towards Ellie despite her disruptive actions. My mother countered, pointing out that while Ellie's behaviour was unacceptable, the way I chose to handle it dragged our family's name through the mud and made our guests uncomfortable, overshadowing the wedding with drama. I was adamant, driven by my desire to expose Ellie's deceit, and I dismissed my mother's concerns, prioritising my response over the potential fallout. As John and I returned to our room, the emotional toll of the evening weighed on us, leaving us to reflect on the repercussions of our choices during the quiet period before our wedding day. The events had set a tense and reflective tone as we prepared to move forward. I sought the perspectives of my maid of honour and the bridesmaids, curious if the wedding guests were still buzzing about the previous night's dramatic revelation. They confirmed that while the incident had indeed shocked everyone, they believed it would be forgotten in time for the wedding. When I probed further, asking if I had perhaps gone too far, they supported my decision. noting that, given my sister's actions, my response was justified. However, my mother's silence since the ordeal left me with a gnawing sense of guilt. Reflecting on it, I couldn't shake off the feeling that perhaps my actions were somewhat childish. The plan to publicly expose Ellie was driven by my desire for her to experience the hurt she had caused me. I rationalised that her decision to pen such a damaging letter to my fiancé was her own undoing. Still, doubts lingered about whether I should have handled things differently. The wedding was approaching, and with it, a restless night. Despite the late hour, I needed to process my feelings and sought advice online. Many echoed my friends' sentiments, supporting my right to respond fiercely, yet others suggested that perhaps I had taken things too far. My conversation with John that evening was pivotal. He shared that while he understood my reasons, perhaps there were other ways to have dealt with Ellie's betrayal. This echoed my mother's earlier admonishments about choosing a more mature approach. Perhaps in her own way, my mother was right. Deciding to address the unresolved tension, John and I visited my mother. Her demeanour softened as she saw us, pulling us into a heartfelt embrace. She confessed that she had been considering coming to us first. Once inside her room, she apologised for her initial reaction, acknowledging that she had failed to fully consider my feelings and the shock of Ellie's actions. She admitted that while she might not have chosen my method of confrontation, she understood why I felt it necessary to take a stand in my own way. Her words were a reminder that, although I was free to make my own choices, those choices came with consequences, including the current strain on our relationship. This conversation was a turning point. It didn't erase the complexity of the situation or the need for further healing, but it did bring a sense of closure and understanding among us. As we moved forward, I knew there would be more to reconcile, not just with my family, but within myself, about the choices I'd made and their impact on those I love. I appreciated my mother's self-reflection and her acknowledgement of her past bias toward Ellie, which had deepened my impression that she would always support Ellie regardless of the situation. In our conversation, she revealed that she had distanced herself from Ellie following her departure from the wedding, waiting for a genuine apology before re-engaging. This openness paved the way for a heartening dialogue about our excitement for the upcoming wedding day, and we parted on positive terms, each of us feeling more understood and connected, feeling heartened by this resolution, which encouraged me to reconcile with my mother before my wedding. As a result, I approached my wedding day filled with joy. However, the drama didn't end with the wedding. Last week, shortly after marrying John, I discovered that Ellie hadn't given up on stirring trouble. She made a Facebook post claiming that her attempt to run away with John was justified because she believed I was a terrible person and she was offering him a better life. She even insinuated that John had been giving her signals, which was a blatant falsehood. I trust John implicitly and know he would never betray our relationship. Fortunately, I didn't see the post myself since I had blocked Ellie, but relatives forwarded it to me. They, along with many others who knew the truth, quickly defended us in the comments, effectively dismantling her claims. After a brief but intense flurry of activity, Ellie removed the post, overwhelmed by the backlash. John and I shared a laugh over the situation, relieved and somewhat amused that her attempts had failed so spectacularly. It's disheartening to see her continue down this path of self-destruction and alienation from our family. If she would just apologise, she could begin to mend her relationship with our mother, the one family member still open to reconciliation. Instead, her stubbornness only seems to isolate her further, not just from our family, but potentially from friends and colleagues who witness her outbursts online. I can't help but feel pity for her now. I'm unsure what led Ellie to this point, but it's clear that her obsession and behaviour are unhealthy. After discussing this with commenters online, many suggested that I should continue talking to my mum about the situation, perhaps to explore ways we might support Ellie in addressing her issues. If she's open to it, it's a complicated situation, but one I hope can eventually find resolution for everyone's sake. My curiosity about what might have triggered such intense resentment in my sister Ellie from around the age of 17 had been growing. I decided to call my mother to discuss any memories she had that might shed light on this shift in Ellie's attitude towards me. My mother recalled a conversation she had with Ellie a few years ago where Ellie expressed frustration about being constantly compared to me. This was surprising, as I couldn't recall any family members who engaged in such comparisons, especially since we were quite similar in many ways, including our academic achievements and personal attributes. My mother then shared something I hadn't known before. Apparently, when Ellie was 17, she dated a boy from my year who insisted on keeping their relationship a secret. This boy frequently compared her to me, unfavourably, which was especially hurtful since I had rejected his advances multiple times. This revelation was a shock, as Ellie had never mentioned any of this to me. This situation seemed to have compounded with an incident at high school where I had unwittingly humiliated Ellie, leading to her being ridiculed for months. To make matters worse, the boy she was dating ended their relationship shortly after this incident. All these factors, unbeknownst to me at the time, contributed to a deep-seated resentment towards me that lingered and grew over the years. Looking back, I wish Ellie had confided in me about the challenges she faced with this boy and the comparisons he drew between us. Perhaps understanding her struggles then could have helped us address and possibly resolve these issues much earlier. However, that past remains unchangeable, and all I can hope for now is a future opportunity to clear the air and reconcile. For now, as John and I prepare to leave for our honeymoon, I find some solace in the thought that the distance might offer a temporary respite from the current family tensions. Perhaps the time away will provide a fresh perspective and help me approach the situation with Ellie with renewed empathy and understanding upon our return.